Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the danger of blindly listening to your friends, your parents, your spouse, whoever you have in your life for career advice, and a few stories of some clients and myself who have been through that and how it was almost dangerous. First of all, I'm really enjoying this drink. This is Perrier, strawberry flavored. Mmm, so good. The little pleasures sometimes that we have to seek in our life. Because, you know, this is what I'm dealing with right now. It's been almost 4 weeks, fun stuff, and just waiting for it to heal. All right. I want to tell you a story of a client that I worked with. Funny enough, his wife is in HR, and obviously he was very successful in my program and he landed his dream job. But while he was going about it, his wife gave him some advice, which kind of surprised me. And it was to actually take his resume, copy and paste it, or sorry, take the job posting, copy and paste it into his resume, change it into a white color so that it's not visible, so that he can pass the ATS. And I kind of chuckled when I heard that because, that advice is not helpful. Now, face value, one would say that she's in HR and she knows what she's talking about when it comes to screening. But the thing that people don't know is that HR is a very wide function. Not every HR person is experienced in screening applications or even how the recruitment process works. Some HR folks are involved in the recruitment process, and some are not involved in the recruitment process. So when someone in HR gives you advice on how to go about your job search or how the recruitment system works, you got to ask them if they're involved in the recruitment process, and sometimes take their advice with a grain of salt, because with this client he could have gone that dangerous path of overly being fixated on keywords and adding them into his resume. But I stopped him. And at first he basically was going to go down that path. He wasn't, caring too much about his positioning and how to align, what he says to what the company is looking for. And when we worked on that, and because he's such a great client and he actually is receptive to coaching, I remember him getting on the call and saying, I got the interview. And I said, what did you do differently? What did you do differently? And he said, oh, you like hearing that you're right. I'm like, yes, I do. Who wouldn't? And he said, yeah, I followed your advice and I simply aligned my resume more effectively the way you taught me. And that's how I got the interview. And now he is in a role that he absolutely loves. He got the offer. It was an industry switch. He's never worked in that industry. And he's just so happy. I'm actually going to get him on my podcast. Okay. So the reason I want to talk about this is because we are human beings. And we absolutely value the advice that our friends and family, parents, spouse gives us. And I know that when someone who cares about you gives you advice, they're giving it to you from a good place. It's a it's well-intentioned advice. People have a intrinsic, basically, motivation to want to help. We all want to give advice. But the thing about giving advice is when it's coming from someone who's not an expert in the area, who hasn't achieved what you want to achieve. It can be very dangerous advice. I was talking to someone today because just like you, I join, coaching programs, and I'm a continuous learner, and there are things that I want to improve, right? And I was on a call today talking to her. I was telling my story about my vestibular migraines. Now, this is a very frustrating illness because it's a non-visible illness that people don't see. People have more sympathy for me when they look at my broken foot, but because they don't see my vestibular migraine, sometimes they think I'm making it up. So, yeah, when I was telling her about the story of my vestibular migraines, she started giving me this advice about how, what do you call it? The reason I have migraines is because I'm not happy in areas in my life, and that it's pretty much all in my head, and that's why I'm getting these migraines. Little does she know that I've had issues with my vestibular system since I was a child. Since I was 5 years old, I would get car sick and I would get dizzy when I'm on the school bus. So how is it possible that the reason I have migraines is because of my mindset and things that are not going well in my life if I'm getting these migraines at the age of 5? Now, of course, I work with neurologists and I work with doctors who are experts in the area. I work with a vestibular physiotherapist, and they explain to me why I have these migraines. It is because my hearing and my vision work well independently. But sometimes what happens when they're trying to work together, that's when the issues happen. And so there's a bit of an imbalance going on, and I have to do these exercises and retrain myself in order for me to not have these migraines. So this person obviously didn't know this, and she started giving me this advice about how I need to meditate and do all of these things, and that's how it's going to fix everything. Now, imagine if I didn't have that knowledge and I didn't work with experts in the area, and I started listening to her, and all I did was meditate and do the things that she said, thinking that that's what's going to cure me, and did not do all of the preventative things that I'm learning from working with my neurologist and medical team. Not taking omega-3, not taking vitamin D, not doing the exercises for my vestibular system. That would end up being dangerous to my health. And so this is the same thing that I want to share with you all when it comes to your career. When you're listening to people who, yes, care about you, but they're giving you anecdotal advice that is not scientific, that is not tested, it can put you in the wrong direction. It can actually destroy your dreams because you think it's not possible to land role X, Y, and Z because your friend tried it and it didn't work for them. And I don't know how, because I suspect that if you're listening to this and you're connected with me, you are either in technology, you are either a leader who is used to using data to make decisions, but somehow you're being swayed by what your friends told you. Another example of that happening. Recently, I spoke to someone on a consultation call, and she shared with me that she has all these friends in McKinsey and consulting companies, and yeah, she doesn't need resume help because she can just go to any one of them. And her comment was, yeah, I'm not looking, to figure out how to fix my resume. I'm looking for a career reinvention. Now, I do applaud her for focusing on the right things, for focusing on the strategic things instead of the tactical things like the resume and the job search stuff. Because, yeah, if you focus on these things, that's not going to move the needle. Just like I had someone reach out to me and say to me that he is trying to build a funnel that would get recruiters who have high paying jobs to reach out to him. And I was just thinking, like, shaking my head and thinking, man, it's been 6 years of me doing this. Nothing ceases to surprise me, but every once in a while, I will get someone who asks me something that honestly just makes me just want to shake my head. Obviously, I politely declined to take the conversation further because I'm not here to teach people how to game the system. That is ridiculous. There's no joy in it for me to teach someone how to build a funnel to get more recruiters to reach out to them with high paying jobs. And that's all you care about. You just care. You see that I, help people land roles between 200,000 and 350,000. And that's out of everything on my profile. That's the only thing that caught your attention. Also, when I see someone and I check out their profile and it's very clear to me that they're making below, let us say 150,000, let's say they're making maybe 120,000, 130,000, and they want to land a $300,000 role. Come on, logically, that's just the math doesn't add up, friends. The math doesn't add up. I mean, I know that there are a lot of people who are severely underpaid, and I've helped people who are severely underpaid. But at the same time, you're asking for a miracle here. Really, you are. And if all it is money for you and not actually creating a great impact, changing the world, doing work you love, then yeah, there's nothing exciting for me here to help you with. Because believe it or not, I don't do this just for the money. Coaching is a very tough profession. You put your heart and soul into helping people, you invest in them, you listen to their personal problems. You're not there to freaking like wave a magical wand, and yeah, it's just not exciting for me. Okay. So anyway, I sent him away and wished him luck. But yeah, the issue here is that there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of leaning too much into the advice you're getting. And what happens is you limit your career vision because of that. That's what happens. Okay, so what I want to do is talk to you about how to do this the right way. Since you're here, I'm not going to be one of these people who baits you into talking to you about all of your problems, and not giving you a solution, because that's ridiculous. I don't like that when people do that to me. The only times I listen to my friends about my career is if they're telling me to ask for more and doing so with swagger. You know what? Friends are good at reminding you of your greatness. Friends are good at listening to you. But when it comes to telling you how to go about it or giving you advice, you have to be careful. Okay? You have to be careful because they're giving you the advice from their own limited awareness of how to go about something. They're giving you the advice based on their situation. Again, it's like going to a doctor versus listening to your friends. Your doctor has treated multiple cases of your situation and even variations of it. They have data. They have tested the advice. And it is also, in the first place, medical advice from, studies and research where thousands and thousands of people have been basically treated. And so this is where I'm coming from. If you came to me in 2020, yeah, maybe you shouldn't believe what I said because I was still starting out. Although I'll tell you, even at that point, I was trained by someone who worked with 4,000 people. And so obviously I learned from her. And then afterwards, I implemented this advice 1,000 times up to this point. So when people come to me and say, well, did you help someone like me? Do you see my following? Do you think there would be close to 50,000 people following me if I didn't know what I'm talking about? I mean, maybe if I had 100, we could assume those 100 people don't know what they're talking about and they're just, following me for fun. But there's close to 50,000 people listening to what I say. There is that. And then there's the fact that I trained for a whole year to actually provide these services. I'm part of an association that holds me accountable. You can Google me and you can put in Nada Bohendi and you can put in International Association of Career Coaches and you'll be able to find my profile. And then there's all of these people on my LinkedIn. If you go into the recommendation section, you can read what they've written. You can click on their profiles and you can see that they are real people on LinkedIn, because guess what? You cannot fake LinkedIn recommendations. You can fake Facebook recommendations. You can fake Google reviews. You can have your friends, create a bogus account and leave you a review, but you cannot do that on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of the strictest accounts out there. Everything needs to be verified. Okay, having said that, let's talk about the solution. How do you go about navigating a career transition? Well, let us start by defining what is a career transition in the first place. Different people have a love and hate relationship to the term career transition. Some people's idea of a career transition is they have to go through an eat, love, pray journey where they have to do soul searching. And when they think of career transition, their heart beats fast and they're like, I don't want to change. I don't want to change my industry. I'm not trying to pivot. Listen, career transition doesn't mean that you have to change everything all the time. Oh, okay. Let's answer this. I cannot see your profile, but I want to get to the friends. Let's just, grab our drinks and have a real conversation. There's nothing off limits. I love that you are trusting me with this because, if you didn't trust me with this, you would not have said this. I've never received career advice that worked or been in a position to receive legit career advice. I've made a lot of mistakes. Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing this. If you're comfortable, and by the way, I can't see your name, so hey, maybe this is fun because it's going to be anonymous. I would love to know, who were you getting this advice from? You don't have to give me the name of the person, but I would love to know, was this a family member? Was this a friend? Was this a professional? Because all of these things are important. There's that. The second thing I wanted to say is, you know what? I feel for you. Brother or sister, again, I cannot see your identity right now for some reason on the live stream. I feel you because you know what? As I've been building my business, I've enrolled in multiple business coaching programs and I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars to learn everything that I know today in order to build my business. And I have encountered, oh my God, so many charlatans out there. And, when I look back, I want to slap my face for actually believing that these people are legitimate. The thing is, when you're vulnerable and when you need help, sometimes your brain just wants to take whatever advice that you're giving. And what happens is you don't verify the source of the advice. If you guys recall, before the internet, yeah, I'm a little bit, old. Okay. I was there before the internet became a thing. In high school, they would tell you to write an essay. And in those years, they would tell you, if you use internet sources, it's not going to count. It has to be a book. And so I would go to the library and make sure that whatever references I was using were coming from an encyclopedia or a book or reputable source. And when the dot-com bubble burst, obviously, the whole concept of going to the library and looking for references such as an encyclopedia is no longer a thing. And it became difficult to actually know what's real and what isn't, because anyone and their grandmother can launch a website and anyone can fake, who they are on the internet. I mean, gosh, recently one of my clients got contacted by a fake recruiter for a fake job. It's a CIO role, for God's sake. And the guy posed himself as 100% legitimate. Like, he even had a business card in his signature. But when him and I sat down and went through the entire chain of emails, by the way, they've been communicating for 6 months before he hired me. We started noticing discrepancies, like the spelling of this recruiter's name was misspelled, right? A whole bunch of stuff, even like LLM standard language, like, let me be direct with you. Oh my God, this is exactly what Claude says to me every time I ask it for advice. So we knew this guy was fake afterwards. Not to mention that I had to lean into my own training as a career coach. And I know that there are certain things that a recruiter is not supposed to ask you. And so I realized that, yeah, like, this guy's a fraud. So back to my point, in terms of all of these business coaching programs, I'll tell you guys a story of how I got tricked. And this is why I understand that you have to do your due diligence. You have to vet the coach that you're going to work with. You can't just, work with anyone. So I was on Facebook and there were all these ads, from this coach saying something like, this is why, you're not getting the right clients or whatever, right? I was still early in my coaching business and I saw these ads. And, oh, it's because of your emotional state, all kinds of weird stuff. So I signed up with this coach. She convinced me that the reason that my business was not where it was going to be is because of my emotional state and my emotional psychological issues. Anyway, I joined the program and she was talking about helping people basically make, $40,000 or something like that a month. After a lot of research, I realized that this coach was not even making $10,000 a month. And she was giving people advice on how to make, $50,000 a month. The second thing I realized, and again, age is not always a factor, but also age can be an indication of experience. I realized that she was only in business for like less than 5 years, and she was in her 20s. I had no idea that she was in her 20s. And again, there are very talented people who are young. I coach a lot of talented people who are prodigies, but sometimes it's a combination of multiple things that makes you realize that this person is a scammer. She was not teaching principles on how to market yourself correctly, how to write good copy, how to, talk to people during consultation calls. She was overly focused on your mindset and your emotions and all this stuff. And then I found out that one of the people in the same program was completely misled by her, and she was promised that she would make millions of dollars. And this person was right out of school and she was being promised that instead of, giving her pragmatic advice. So that's when I started slapping my face because, I've had years of experience in the corporate world, more than 15 years. And I should have known better. But I hear you when it comes to scams. Never family. They just smile and say, you'll be okay. I also think people believe I got it, and lots of times I don't. Wow. Thank you so much for your honesty. You know what? This is why I designed my program the way it is, and I'm going to get into it. Sometimes it can feel very lonely when people in your circle don't understand you. When they assume that you've got it. And maybe you might want to ask yourself why you're showing up that way. It could be that you don't trust their advice, or you just you don't feel comfortable being vulnerable around those friends and family, right? So that's something that you may want to ask yourself. Obviously, I don't know you and I don't know everything, so I'm just giving this to you based on a grain of salt. I don't want to be that coach who sort of makes assumptions about your situation, because I have been there myself where people made a lot of assumptions about what's going on for me and then ended up giving me wrong advice. So if you want something accurate, if you want a more accurate assessment of your situation, I highly recommend booking a career diagnosis with me. Okay, so I want to talk to you about my philosophy in terms of how people can navigate career transition. So as I mentioned, I've worked with over 1,000 senior leaders breaking through their ceiling to attract opportunities that bring them joy, money, and recognition. While I am very good at helping people write their resume from the ground up, I don't see the work that I do as a resume rewrite or a LinkedIn refresh or interview coaching package. I see it as a personal transformation. And many people have said this to me. Working with you has felt like I was going through a transformation. It has changed my life, because I believe that one of the reasons people have trouble with their career is because it's almost like they have to split their identity between work and between their personal life. Unfortunately, we have led to the belief that it's impossible to actually make money and actually be happy in your career, and that we have to bring a different, person to work than the person who is really within us, and the same person with our friends and with our family. So in order to merge those identities, and in order to truly embrace who you are, in order to attract opportunities that bring you joy, we have to do a lot of foundational work. You and I, if you were hypothetically my client, in order for me to understand you as a professional, in order for me to understand your professional identity, we need to align on who you actually are professionally. And the biggest mistake that a lot of service providers and coaches make is they don't spend enough time listening to you and understanding you. And this is why, my friend, when you shared with me that you've never received career advice that worked, I will say it is most likely because whoever was giving you that advice was jumping into conclusions, prescribing a solution to you instead of doing a proper assessment. It's kind of like going to a doctor. You can tell the difference between a good doctor and a bad doctor. A bad doctor is going to just nod their head and say, quickly write things down to protect themselves legally. but they're not going to ask you a lot of questions. They're not going to listen, and they're not going to provide you the opportunity to talk. They're going to jump into conclusions. They're going to make assumptions about you. They're going to say things like, oh, you have this pain. Oh, it's probably depression. Instead of saying something like, how long has this pain been going on? What time of the day has this pain been happening? Where is the pain located? Let us do some tests. Let's do some imaging. Let's do some blood work. And then let's look at the data to figure out what the true problem is. And then we can come up with a plan, right? So this is the same thing. When I work with my clients, I have to understand you as a person. Even if you understand yourself and what you want in your career, I have to do my due diligence in order to make sure that I understand you in order for us to build your brand. This is a transformation because you need to make some changes in the way you show up. You might need to make some changes in your goals, right? Maybe because you've been thinking that it's impossible to achieve that goal, you haven't been very honest about what you want. And so a lot of my clients, talk about these things for the first time, and it can feel a little uncomfortable to talk about these things, to talk about their childhood, to talk about their, the initiatives that they were part of in their career. And the goal is to get crystal clear on your career direction, the right direction that is gonna help you get the highest possible salary depending on your situation. Again, I never promise anyone who comes to me and say, well, everyone who comes to me is gonna make $300,000. That is freaking ridiculous, because every person has a unique set of experience. Every person has different abilities. Every person has a different career history. I'm not going to blow smoke, and trick people and flash the whole, you can get a job in 90 days and it's going to be $300,000. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's like a university professor saying to you, you're going to take my program and I guarantee that you're going to get an A+, even though I know nothing about your background and how you learn, right? So the goal is to get clear on your career direction and rewrite your story. And so we'll align on who you actually are professionally, and then we architect that story so that you build your reputation in the market, so that you get invited to the right rooms, so that you attract the right opportunities. And this is a skill set that isn't just about landing a job. This is a skill set that you learn and an understanding of yourself that dictates every aspect of your career. It dictates how your boss starts speaking to you. It dictates, what kind of opportunities come to the table. It dictates what type of people, professionals you attract. Because depending on the vibe that you put out there, the brand that you create, you are going to be surrounded by different types of people in your professional life. So the resume, the LinkedIn, the interview answers, we absolutely work on those, but they are a byproduct of the personal transformation resulting from the 90-day journey that I walk with you as your trusted advisor. Okay, so what are these different phases that I go through with my clients? The first one is what I call the identity excavation. Knowing who you are. You need to know who you are. We need to figure out who you are, and we need to be on the same page on this, because I'm not the kind of coach who's going to send you off and let you figure everything out on your own. Whenever I join a program that does that, personally in the past, it's freaking frustrating when all the decisions are put on you. You don't know what decision to make because you have a limited view on what's possible, right? So that's the thing. So knowing who you are, part of it is unearthing the professional identity that the market has been misperceiving and defining what sets you apart. I really believe that this is where every single professional needs to start when they're navigating a career transition. Now, there are a number of tools that I have developed that basically help with expediting this process. The first one is my career archetype assessment. This is a proprietary tool that I have developed over many years. I've tested it over many clients, I've iterated on it. And this assessment is designed to ask you the right questions in order for me to understand who you are as an individual. Part of it is a journaling exercise where we go into your childhood and all of the pivotal moments in your career. Another part of it is understanding your leadership style. And so I piece all of these pieces of the puzzle and connect the dots with you. And then we get on what I call a clarity call. My God, when people get on this call, they come out of it with so much peace. I've had a client who said to me, it almost feels like you read my mind. All these years I've been thinking about, I've been thinking all these things about myself, but I haven't been able to say them out loud. And once we go through that, we do what I call an ideal role mapping. We take our deep understanding of who you are as a professional and we map it with options that are in the market, right? And this is the part that, gosh, it's missing from a lot of coaching programs. A lot of coaching programs are going to make you do the journaling exercises and are going to ask you all these questions, but then they stop there and they expect you to decide what job you want to do. That's not helpful. And so what I do instead is based on my database of all of the roles out there, I will suggest different pathways that you can take. Okay? The thing is, I am a career transition expert, and my specialty is actually helping people pivot in their career. I have worked on very complex cases where I've had a doctor who pivoted, a physician, a medical physician who pivoted into product management in tech. I've helped an assistant professor in theater become a learning consultant at a tech company. I've had an entrepreneur, pivot into a role that he loves in corporate. I've had a franchise coffee owner pivot into corporate and become a director of operations. So pivots are my jam, but it doesn't always mean that every single person that I work with ends up making a big change. Some people stay in the same industry and it's a matter of just moving up. Some people we figure out, they're actually in the right role in the right industry, but the organization has a toxic culture and we need to change that. So it really depends on your situation. And that is how we identify the right role for you. Okay, once we are clear on your vision for your career and translate it to a specific role, then what we work on is what I call your narrative architecture. And that is telling your story. You may have been telling the wrong story your entire life, or your aspirations have changed and you need to rewrite your story, or you've never really had to formally look for a job. You've been falling into every role that you've held and you've never really had the opportunity to actually tell your career story. So what we end up doing is we build a cohesive narrative that aligns with your new career direction and builds trust with your audience through your story, your message, and executive presence. So, yes, absolutely. One of the deliverables that come out of it is your resume and your LinkedIn profile. But again, when we don't do the meaningful work that goes behind that, we end up with a surface level document. When our idea of building our story is talking to ChatGPT, all ChatGPT is going to do is it's going to take what you give it. But if you're giving it the wrong thing, then it's not going to tell the right story. And it's going to tell the story in a way that doesn't make sense to recruiters. Okay? Some of the pitfalls that I see people make is when they tell their story, they try to please every recruiter in the planet because in their mind, I don't want to limit myself. I don't want to miss opportunities. But all you're doing is you're attracting the wrong opportunities because you're not being specific about what you want and what you don't want and what you enjoy doing and what you don't enjoy doing. It's almost like working with a matchmaker. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie or the Netflix TV show Indian Matchmaker. Imagine if the Indian matchmaker worked with a family and they said to her, well, find us whoever. What does that even mean? I don't want to limit my options, so just find me any guy. And then, you end up wasting time on dates that are terrible because you weren't specific about what you want. So that's the same thing. All recruitment is, it's matchmaking. And if you want the right match and you don't want to waste your time, then you have to be specific about what you want. Okay? And in order to portray what you want, we have to build the right story. We have to tell the right story. So one of the things that I do is I actually interview my clients. I don't give people templates and fill in the blank stuff and then expect them to figure out how to build their resume based on that. I love to make it a fun experience where we sit down on a call and I interview you about what you've done in your career. And I listen to the things that light you up, the things that don't light you up, and then we craft an entire narrative around what you've done. We build a very clear brand, okay? So here's an example of what I mean by a clear brand. This wonderful drink that I've been drinking has a very clear label. And they're very clear on who their audience is, who their consumer is. They're not going to appeal to someone who's not health conscious, and they're not going to appeal to someone who doesn't care about luxury. And I'm pretty sure that when they designed this, they had in mind someone who probably doesn't drink alcohol. Okay, someone like me. So that's how specific you want to be, because when you do that, then you are going to attract the right opportunities. Recruiters are going to look at your profile and they'll instantly know, wow, this person is our person and they can solve our problem. And it's very clear they can based on their profile. Okay. The other thing that I do with my clients, especially if you are an executive, is I provide professional photography guidance. Let's be honest. People are visual human beings. If you have an ugly photo, it's not because you're an ugly person, but hey, I've had an ugly photo on my LinkedIn profile where I wasn't smiling or I was giving off the wrong vibes. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, you're going to see that my photo it follows best practices. I'm looking straight in the camera, I'm smiling, I'm approachable. But that's because I've learned basically the principles of how to build a professional brand. So the thing is, when a recruiter comes through your profile, they're going to form an opinion based on your photo. And so that is something that I definitely work on with every single client. And so the outcome of this phase is that you're going to get a story and that becomes part of your personal brand, one that you're proud of, that you share across your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your networking conversations, so that the right opportunities come to you. This isn't about volume. More interviews doesn't mean that you're successful. In fact, if you go to many interviews and you end up bombing them, You're going to get frustrated. I mean, who enjoys going through from one rejection to another? It impacts your self-esteem, right? So might as well do this the right way. Okay, the last part that I wanted to share when it comes to navigating a career transition, it's not enough to figure out your career direction. It's not enough to have a very powerful personal brand and a story if you're not activating it. What do I mean by activating it? It's like, imagine again, Perrier spent a lot of money coming up with this logo, this beautiful label, and they didn't make an effort to find stores that would agree to put their product on the shelf. You can't just have a pretty label and expect the bottle to end up on the shelves of stores. You have to actually go to the stores, talk to them, and say, hey, I have an amazing product. I think it's going to bring you a lot of money. Put it on your shelves. You have to have these conversations. You have to target the right, retailers. And so this is what we call market activation. Okay. So you can't just expect your pretty resume and your pretty LinkedIn profile to be viewed by recruiters. You have to have a strategy to get in front of the right people who are going to make the decisions. Again, going back to my client who landed his dream job, he had an amazing resume. We got the resume, right. It was aligned to the right opportunities, but I gave him a strategy to connect with hiring managers so that he's on their radar and to do it in a way that is not salesy. I had another client too last Thursday. He actually got so excited. I was at an appointment getting my foot checked and he was calling me on my phone. I want to talk to you. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened. And I'm like, what happened? He goes, I did exactly what you asked me to do. I applied for the job and I sent a connection request to the VP and the recruiter. And literally on the same day, I already have an interview with the recruiter and they already scheduled me for an interview on Monday with the hiring manager because he went about it in a relationship building way, which is what I taught him. And that is what you learn in my program. So there it is. I walked you through the right approach to navigate a career transition. Now, what I wanted to say is obviously this sounds all easy when I say it. It's not as easy as it sounds. This is why it's a 90-day program, because a lot of this is an emotional journey. You're going to start having self-doubt. You're going to have imposter syndrome. Maybe the first interview, you're going to get rejected and then you're going to start doubting the whole strategy. Maybe you might think about giving up. And with anything in life, it's like when an athlete is training for a marathon, they could be training in the best way possible, but their mind can play tricks on them. They may start feeling tired, they may start feeling bored, and they may not follow through. And in order to follow through, this is why, like, when people tell me, well, I can go on ChatGPT and get the answers, great. ChatGPT can give you the answers. But ChatGPT is not going to motivate you to keep going. It's not a human being. It's not the same as working with someone that you're speaking to, right? And this is why a big part of my program is having a community, because I do believe that people learn better when they're in a classroom setting, when they're trying to navigate goals with aligned people versus trying to navigate goals on their own. It's just not as much fun. This is why, statistically speaking, when you are, let's say, exercising, if you're exercising with a friend or exercising with a group of people, if you're showing up to a class at a specific time every single week and you're creating a routine, what that does is it builds habits for you where you end up committing, right? Commitment is a huge part of success, and a lot of the reason why people don't land their dream role, sometimes it's not even because of the market. It's not even because of their resume or their LinkedIn profile. It's because they don't follow through. They give up before the opportunity materializes. And so my program is designed to create that accountability. There's so many insane things in my program. There's the pragmatic part that gives you the structures and the systems. There's some innovative techniques where we do a lot of soul searching, understand who you are. And then there is the accountability aspect that is unlike any other program. I curate every single person who comes into my program. Every single person who comes to my program is an incredible human being who is nice. It is a safe space. And this is why people have a very high success rate, because of the way I've designed this. All right. Now, if you're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need right now. I'm in a funk in my career. I'm tired of following the wrong advice. I'm tired of going about this alone. What I invite you to do is book a career diagnosis with me. Okay? Now, if you're watching this for the first time and you don't know anything about me, please do not book the call until you go through some of my content. I am not going to sit here and convince you that my approach works. And even if I try to, it doesn't make sense. Of course, I'm going to tell you that it works. Instead of me telling you that it works, go through my content and ask yourself, does the way I explain things make sense to you? Do you resonate with my story, my personal story? Have you read my about section? Have you seen the types of clients that I worked with? Can you relate to those people? If the answer is yes, then there's a high chance that we are aligned, right? Okay, now, how do you book a call? Very simple. Underneath my heading, there's a book an appointment button. Click on that. Please watch this video. In this video, I tell you about my story, and there are actual client stories and testimonials. Please don't come on a call and ask me, so how did you become a career coach and what is it that you do? Watch this video. It answers your question, right? I cannot do this for like 1,000 people who reach out to me, because these calls are only 15 minutes and I'd rather spend more time understanding your situation than trying to convince you that my process works and who the heck I am. Okay? Obviously, if I find during the call that whatever you're struggling with is something that I can help with, most likely I will be able to, having worked with so many types of people. But, I still ask these questions to make sure that I can. Then we can talk in more depth in terms of how the program works and, all of these wonderful things, and answer any questions that you have. All right. So this is how you book a call with me. And as you can see, I'm a very direct person. This is my coaching style. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't want someone to be honest with you and wants someone to just stroke your ego, then I'm definitely not the right person to work with. But if you want someone who's honest, who has your back, who wants you to succeed, who's going to give you the support that you need to be successful, then this could be an aligned and a successful relationship. All right. It doesn't matter to me, whoever's listening, whether we end up working together or not. What matters to me is that you got a different perspective in terms of how to navigate your career transition, that you got some light bulb moments listening to this live. Maybe you've been fixating on all of the advice that you're being given and you're not trusting yourself. Maybe you've been surrounded by friends, coworkers, family members who tell you that your goals are unrealistic. And I want to, disprove all of that, because I do want people to be successful in their career. I care so much. If you find any of this advice helpful at all, then I would really appreciate, giving me a like. I don't monetize my content. And so where I get my fulfillment in terms of creating more content is when people acknowledge that they've seen my content and give me feedback. That's all I'm asking for. It's free to hit the like button. And what would even be more powerful is if you actually reposted this so that someone in your connection can benefit from it, or share it with a friend. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for LinkedIn user who's been engaging in the chat. I really appreciate you and your participation. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can also DM me. Hope you have a wonderful night, everyone.